Emma Lane moved like a shadow, silent, unnoticed, and half there. The bell above the diner door jingled every time she passed through it, but no one really looked up anymore. Just the Bruises looked fresh. Purple fading to yellow, yellow to blue again, like storm clouds stuck in her skin. The town had stopped asking how. Stopped pretending to care. It was easier to assume she was clumsy. Easier to chuckle, sip coffee, and throw around careless words like, "That girl couldn't walk across the room without kissing the floor." But they all knew. Behind their laughter, behind the smirks and eye rolls, they knew. It was Blake, the mechanic with too much anger and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He was charming when he wanted to be, like a snake wrapped in velvet. And when Emma started dating him a year ago, they all said the same thing: poor girl doesn't know what she's getting into. But they watched it happen. Watched her fade. Watched her body bruise. Watched her eyes stop meeting theirs. And not a damn one of them did anything. Even the sheriff pretended not to notice the limp she walked with on Tuesdays, or how she wore sweaters in the heat of July. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was comfort. Maybe the town of Ash Pines had just grown too used to silence. Until the day the door opened and he walked in. He filled the doorway like a bear rising on its hind legs, broad, bearded, with a quiet that spoke louder than any shout. Long dark coat soaked in rain, boots caked in red mud from the mountain pass, eyes sharp and strangely sad. The diner didn't go silent, exactly, but it shifted. As if something ancient had walked in. As if the wind from the trees had taken human form. He didn't sit. He just scanned the room like he was looking for someone. And when his eyes found Emma, she looked away so fast it hurt her neck. "Can I help you?" asked Mel behind the counter, voice a little too tight. He didn't answer right away. Just stepped forward slowly, the floor groaning under his weight. "Coffee," he said. Just one word, gravel thick and slow like it had to be dragged out from under stones. He sat at the end booth, Emma's section. She didn't want to go. Every cell in her body screamed no. But she picked up the pot, grabbed a mug, and walked toward him. She didn't look at him when she poured. "You're hurt," he said. She flinched, nearly spilling the coffee. "I'm fine." "No," he said calmly. "You're not." She looked up then, because she had to, because something in his voice wasn't like the others. It wasn't pity. It wasn't judgment. It was like he already knew. Like he'd seen it before. "Thanks for the coffee," he added softly, and something in his tone made her throat tighten. She turned and hurried away. But he came back the next day. Same booth. Same coffee. Same quiet stare. And the day after. And again. People started to notice. Started whispering. "What's with the mountain man?" they joked. Did the hills spit out Bigfoot? But he didn't laugh. He just came. Saturday. Watched. And each day, Emma stood a little straighter. On the 5th day, Blake came in. He never liked the diner. Said it stank of grease and dead dreams. But today, he walked in like he owned the place. Leather jacket. Beer on his breath. And rage behind his eyes. Emma froze the second she saw him. Her hands trembled. Her body shrunk. And Blake saw it. He smirked. Walked right up and whispered something cruel in her ear. She nodded fast, afraid to disobey. Then he saw the mountain man. "You got a staring problem?" Blake asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. The stranger didn't blink. "You're talking too loud," he said, calm and cold. Blake laughed. "Excuse me. You're upsetting her." The room held its breath. Emma's face went white. Blake turned, took 2 steps forward, fists already curled. "You don't know who you're messing with, big guy." The stranger stood. And when he stood, it was like the mountain itself was rising. He stepped between Emma and Blake like a wall, like a promise, and said, "She's with me now." The diner gasped. The air shifted. And for a moment, Blake's smirk faltered. "The hell she is." "She doesn't belong to you," the stranger said. "You touch her again, you answer to me." Blake didn't swing. Not yet. But the threat hung thick between them. The stranger never gave his name that day. But the story spread like wildfire. The bruised girl has a guardian, the kids called it. The mountain man's warning. And Emma? She didn't understand it. Didn't trust it. Didn't believe it. But for the first time in a long time, someone saw her. Someone stood between her and pain. And it felt like breathing again after almost drowning. That night, Blake waited outside her apartment. Drunk. Furious. You think someone like him can protect you, he snarled, grabbing her arm. She didn't answer. Didn't cry. Just whispered, he already is. The next morning, she came into the diner with a fresh bruise and eyes full of fire. She walked up to the mountain man and said, "You don't even know me." He nodded once. "I know enough. Why are you doing this?" He looked up at her then, and the weight in his eyes was heavier than stone. Because someone should have done it a long time ago. That was the day Emma stopped hiding her bruises. The town of Ash Pines had always whispered. It whispered about the weather, the forest, the girl who used to be pretty before the bruises. But now it whispered about him. About the giant with the 1,000-yard stare who sat at the same booth every morning, who only spoke when necessary, who watched Emma like she mattered. Some called him the Mountain, others just him. No one knew his name. And no one dared to ask, not since Blake walked into the diner with violence in his fists and walked out with silence in his eyes. That day hadn't ended in blood, but it had come close. The mountain man never touched Blake. Didn't have to. One look, one step, one sentence, "She's with me now," and it was like something ancient had spoken. Since then, Blake hadn't come back. But everyone knew he would. Emma didn't know what to think. She kept asking herself the same question, why is he doing this? She was no one. Just a girl who poured coffee and took hits. She didn't matter to the sheriff, the town, or even to herself some days. But he, this stranger who could break a tree in half with his hands, he acted like she did. He didn't speak much. But he showed up. Every day. Sat in the same booth. Waited until she finished her shift. Walked her to the bus stop. Sometimes he followed her all the way home, not close enough to scare her, just close enough to make sure no one else did. One night she asked, "You a bodyguard or something?" He shook his head. "No, then why?" He didn't answer right away. Just said, "Because I know what it's like to have no one." His name was Elias North. A former firefighter turned hermit after his wife died in a cabin fire 5 years ago. He never went into town. Never spoke to anyone. Until one day he came down from the mountain, looking for nails, and found bruises in a waitress's eyes. That's what he told her on a cold Tuesday night, sitting outside her apartment, watching her front door like a loyal wolf. Emma didn't cry. She just listened. For the first time, someone else had pain bigger than hers. "I couldn't save her," he said, voice like thunder turned soft. "But maybe I can save someone." Blake didn't stay quiet long. It started with the phone calls. Ringing in the middle of the night. Then notes slipped under her door, "You think he can protect you forever?" Then came the knife marks on her tires. The town looked the other way. As always. Because Blake was one of them. His father built half the homes in Ash Pines. His brother coached the high school football team. Emma? She was just the girl people pitied in private and mocked in public. But now she had Elias. And Elias didn't scare easy. One night, Blake showed up outside her window. Drunk. Screaming. Threatening to burn the whole building down. Emma called Elias, not the cops. He arrived in minutes. And when Blake lunged at him with a tire iron, Elias didn't hit back. He disarmed him, pressed him to the ground, and whispered something in his ear that made Blake's face go pale. Then he let him go. Just like that. No bruises. No police. Just a quiet message that said, "This ends now, or it ends badly." The town's whispers turned to murmurs. "He's dangerous," they said. "She's brainwashed," they claimed. Nobody helps people like that for free. But Elias kept showing up. Day after day. wordlessly loyal. And Emma began to change. Slowly. She wore her hair down. She stopped wearing sleeves. Her bruises faded. Her laughter returned. She smiled without apology. And once, just once, she leaned against Elias's shoulder and didn't pull away when he didn't move. "You're not scared of me," she said. "I've seen worse," he replied. "But not in you." Then came the night Blake snapped. It was during the Harvest Festival, a town tradition filled with pie contests, hayrides, and fake smiles. Emma was there. For the first time in 2 years, she let herself be seen. She wore a yellow dress. No makeup. Just her. Real, and raw, and whole. And Elias walked beside her like a mountain at peace. People stared. Some smiled. Others whispered. But Emma didn't care, not tonight. Until Blake showed up drunk and full of poison. He dragged her behind the corn maze. Said she was humiliating him. Said Elias was just using her. When she tried to scream, he slapped her so hard she saw stars. "You think anyone's gonna protect you when I'm done," he growled. But Elias was already there. He grabbed Blake mid-sentence, yanked him off her like a rag doll, and slammed him into the cornfield dirt. This time, there was no quiet warning. This time, Elias roared. Not with fists, but with fury. "You put your hands on her again," he said, eyes burning, voice low, "and you won't walk away." The sheriff came running. Elias didn't flinch. "He attacked her," he said, standing tall. "Arrest him." The sheriff hesitated. Looked at Blake, bloody, weeping, suddenly small. "You sure about this?" he asked Emma. And for the first time in her life, she said, "Yes." Blake was arrested. Charged. And this time, the bruises mattered, because someone stood beside her. Because Elias made the town look. Made them see what they ignored. And it was like a dam broke. Other girls came forward. Old stories resurfaced. Suddenly the town couldn't pretend anymore. Emma kept working at the diner. But people stopped laughing. They started tipping more. They started seeing her. And Elias. He stayed. Not just as a shadow, but as something real. He helped fix her door. Painted her apartment. Left food at her steps. He never asked for anything in return. Until one night, sitting on her porch under the stars, he said, "You're stronger than you know." She smiled. "You helped me be." He shook his head. "No. I just reminded you." They didn't kiss. Not yet. Some healing takes time. But when Emma leaned her head on his chest and listened to his heartbeat, she knew something she hadn't known in years: safety. And it wasn't loud. It wasn't wild. It was steady. Present. Unshakable. The town still whispered. But not about her bruises anymore. Now they whispered about the girl who stood tall, and the giant who stood beside her. And every time the diner door jingled, Emma didn't flinch anymore. Because now she knew, whatever came through that door, she wasn't alone. Not ever again.